Hi, I hope that was informative for you, and we're moving on into more better stuff. So, our next speaker is Dr. Jacqueline Nolis, Principal Data Scientist at Fanatics Inc. She has 15 years of experience of running data science teams and projects at companies such as Airbnb and Boeing. She is also known for her popular book and podcast, Build Your Career in Data Science, alongside Emily Robinson. We all have apps we don't launch, right? I mean, there are so many in my graveyard, so I actually know that that's a common problem. Today, Jacqueline will take us along on a wonderful journey through her drawer and show us the shiny apps she did not launch. What an intriguing yet relatable premise. I am curious. I'm sure the audience is curious too. Take it away, Jacqueline. The stage is yours. We're ready.
Great. Thank you for the very nice introduction. Yeah. So I have, over the past, I don't know, many years, have given many talks about shiny apps I've made. But occasionally I have some apps that don't make it to the finish line, and I never get a chance to share them. So I am so happy that I actually am going to get a small sliver of time to talk about some weird ideas I've had that I've started as shiny apps, have not finished. You'll see why. And we'll have a lot of fun. This is a silly talk because this is not like, oh, and I'm going to teach you some cool shiny thing you can work yourself. This is just maybe a light encouragement kind of talk where maybe at the end of this you think, oh, I too feel a little bit better for all the failed apps I haven't quite launched. So, okay. So a little bit of background to make this, feel like a real talk. Shiny. Why do we love it? It's great for prototyping. I think compared to any other programming languages and paradigm I've used, and I've used a bunch over the years, none of them are as fast for getting something that reasonably does what you want to do in production as fast as Shiny, right? Like you can have an idea of like, hey, I have this model. I'm going to make it where you can click the buttons and it does things. Like it actually runs the model. Like nothing goes as fast as Shiny in any language. I think that's really fantastic. And sometimes, and maybe you as a listener have had this, where you make like, oh, I'm just going to mock up a quick demo in Shiny. And then boom, that actually ends up going into production. Like that ends up being the final product. It's so good. Sometimes it does not get there though. So here are some examples, just like as an aside from my career, of times where the Shiny demo has been so good that it's actually changed my work. So on the left, these are both when I consulted for T-Mobile, and these are both, you can find more about them in the RStudio conf talks from 2019 and 2020. So on the left was a time where we had a model, an NLP model at T-Mobile, and the business just wasn't getting it. And then we just made a quick UI around the model where you typed in the text and then the model ran and showed you the predictions. And that changed the game for us. And that really got our product out the door. Then on the right is like years later, we had another situation where the model was running and people weren't understanding why it was making the predictions. So just real quick in Shiny, I used like the iGraph package and I made it break down of when you type in a sentence, where the different parts of the predictions are coming from and what the importance are. So these are two times where Shiny really was great. This isn't the silly stuff yet. This is just the normal stuff. But if you want to learn about these normal things, the videos of those exist. I personally like using Shiny for fun. And I think similar things have happened with Shiny where I can actually get full UIs out the door with Shiny. So on the left, that is Tweet Mashup, RIP Twitter, where like this actually cannot work anymore because the Twitter API doesn't exist anymore. But back when the Twitter API existed, what Tweet Mashup would do is it would let you take two user accounts for Twitter and make a tweet that mashed up both of them. I have that. I didn't originally run that in Shiny, but then I actually migrated all to Shiny and it worked just fine. It was great, really easy to do. Then on the right is a separate thing I did where I actually made a whole website where it's an e-commerce website where you can actually order stuff via Shiny. I have a separate talk about. I've talked about all these things. I really like Shiny, as you can kind of get the frame. These are all projects that have successfully launched. I'm just setting the stage for my failures, so you can kind of like get a lay of the land of like what's the kind of stuff I do. So as I was saying, sometimes Shiny is great. It gets you some prototypes. Sometimes those prototypes you realize are not good, right? You can realize, hey, this wasn't actually a good idea, or hey, this is a good idea, but it is complicated enough that I should not be doing it in Shiny anymore. And I'm going to talk about some of these. Here we go. So these are 3 of my favorite Shiny apps that I ever made that I have not actually successfully launched and have never talked about really before. So I'm excited. So the first one is called Shiny Move. That was the name for it, or at least that was the name of the repo on my computer. That was the name of the repo. So what is Shiny Move? So here's my problem. I really like biking. I live in Seattle. I really like biking in Seattle, but In Seattle, in the winter, it rains at and it gets 38 degrees out. It gets very cold. It is not fun to bike. But I really wish I was biking. So I wished, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I had an app that when I was like on my indoor exercise cycle, I could like pretend I was actually biking, which meant the thing I like about biking is the exploring and the looking around and like seeing the world around me. So really what I wanted to do was to get that experience of like actually seeing the routes I know I love. And I didn't want to have to pay to buy such a thing like this. I figured I will make something like this myself. So if you go on Google, you may have noticed before with Google, you can get Google biking maps for a route you want to take. So like this is the route I would commonly take from Issaquah to Seattle. And that route, not only does it have the actual route, but you can see the elevation change and you can actually get your street maps view from every single point on the map. So my thought was, hey, what if I made a Shiny app that queried the Google API, got the route in there, got all the street map pictures, and then looked at where the elevation changes were so I can knew like should the bike ride be hard or easy at this point, and turned all of that into a Shiny app that I could use while I'm riding my bike and to kind of make it go. So I actually make a working MVP. And I have a slide for it in case this thing didn't work, but it actually did work. So let me pull it up real quick. Hold on. Let's see. Well, it mostly worked. This is all years old code. So, after like 20 minutes it crashes. But okay. So here we go. I think I might have hit the limit of the Google API while waiting for this. Okay, we're going to try one more time. This is why it's a failure. We'll talk about this in a second. Okay, here we go. This is the real app. Let me do it here. Okay, here's the real app. So this is a real app. And so what do you see here? This is the actual Google Maps API I queried. So I would query the Google Maps API. This is running in Shiny. This is showing you a Google Street Maps view from where this route is. And so if you wait, this is the beginning in Issaquah. If we waited a couple seconds, it will occasionally update and pull in a new picture from Issaquah. All of this done in Shiny. All of this done with the Google Maps API. Very cool. I was super proud. Anyways, let's talk about why I haven't finished this project. And I guess in theory, I could at some point finish it, but I have not yet finished it. So reason one is it's actually shockingly expensive to query the street map specifically. So the Google Maps API, it's like, a cent to get the map and the route and all the elevation. But to actually get all the street view images, it would be like $1 or something for all the street view images on the route, which on its own isn't bad. But if I open this to the public and everyone's querying it and stuff, that could actually get more expensive. So I could create caching, but that gets annoying. And then like, well, what if the route changes slightly? Or like, how often do I have to update the cache? And like the moment it becomes a caching problem, it becomes much less fun for me. Two, there's actually weird quirks in this data. So for instance, this is actually from that Issaquah route. There's one point where everything's going along fine. And then just suddenly the Google data is 300 feet taller. I don't know why this is in the API. If you look at the route that you get from like on the UI from Google, it does not have a giant 300-foot wall. But if I were to bike, it would suddenly tell me I need to bike as high as possible. So that is not great. And also it turns out the UI is shockingly complicated. If you think about it in Shiny, like really what I want to do is have like, the bike route automatically moving. And like over time, I like progress along that map. But I also want ability to fast forward and rewind and that sort of stuff. And like adding a UI component that's fast forward and rewind, like a YouTube movie kind of a bar, that's actually a lot of complexity to do in Shiny. So all these things started going together and I'm like, wait, this isn't fun anymore. And this is the thing I was doing in my free time. So I put the project down, haven't thought about it since, but I find it fascinating. Okay, so that's project one. Project two. Okay, and this I kind of alluded to in some other talks, so this may not be entirely new for some people, but this is the idea of a daylight poster website. So I have two side projects that are going to feature into this. One is actually that GGIRL site I mentioned earlier with the ability to, hey, I want to actually order something via Shiny, like the ability for someone to like launch a website that you can make orders from and like it actually ships it and pays me money and things like that. Two, I actually had this idea for making these really cool daylight savings daylight charts that tell you what time like daylight savings is and like during the year where the when sunset is and nautical twilight and all these different terms. And so I've put a lot of work into actually making these charts look fairly cool. I have a whole separate talk about why that was way harder than I expected. And I have a separate talk about GGIRL. So I had these two ideas and I said, okay, I have the ability to make these cool charts. I have the ability to collect money via Shiny. What if I put them together and I created a website where you go to the website, you type in your location name, it creates a poster, you pay me $40, I mail you that poster. This seems like it should be actually very simple because it really is just taking two projects I made before and putting them together. And again, I have an MVP starting to work. So here, I'm going to pull it up again. So there's actually, let's see. Is it this one? Okay, here we go. Here's the UI in practice. So here is a website where you go to the website. It shows you the chart. You should be able to, I actually forgot to test this. Let's do Issachar again. Well, anyways, you type in the name, it actually creates the chart for you. You can add to cart. You can do all these kind of cart stuff. It feels like I'm close to actually having this project done where you can pay me money to get one of these printed and mailed to your door. But there's some problem. Actually, before I go into the problems, let me talk about the architecture, because I think the architecture is actually fairly cool. So the architecture, how this works is it's two separate components. One is it's the actual Shiny UI, which is running in Google Cloud Run. So like it's a Google Cloud Docker container. And then I have a separate Docker container with a Plumber API to generate the charts. So I've split these things. There's the work of generating the chart, and there's the UI component to actually make the website order, things like that. And it uses Google Cloud Storage as a place to store all the images, and it uses Stripe to make the payments. So this all feels good, but there's two problems I've had that make this basically, I don't know if that's impossible, but I never want to work on it. So problem one is that image is actually slow to generate. So the way I ended up doing it is I have to do, oh, that should be, I don't know why I wrote spatial. See, this is great because I'm not in presenter mode, so I'm just going to fix my typos. Spatial math, not social math. Come on. So I actually have to do, you have to do complex math to figure out when sunrise and sunset are, things like that. I ended up having to use a Python package via Reticulate that I have to run that 365 days. And it actually just takes about 30 seconds to compute when all the sunrises and sunsets and everything are. And I can't cache that in advance because I don't know every single city people are going to type in. And even if I had all that data, it does still take a little while to generate the actual image with ggplot. So that adds too. So which ends up meaning it's 30 seconds to generate, which is terrible because two reasons. One, I don't want to leave my Shiny app waiting for the response from the Plumber API. I have to actually then do some sort of handshake where I said, okay, here's the city name that I'm going to wait. And you want to pass it back to me when you're ready for it. And that all sucks. And two, I don't want the UI to just have a slow spinning circle. 30 seconds to generate the image just isn't practical. So here's what I would want the solution to be, which is I would like Shiny to have a WebSocket open, or just Shiny should just kind of wait so that when the image is updated, it can listen for it. Or maybe Shiny pings the API every n seconds saying, hey, do you have the image done yet? But the trick is I really want it to generate partial images, which is to say, instead of generating all 365 days of sunrise and sunsets, generate a month, one for each month, pass that into a simple plot, put that in the UI, and then have it slowly get better. So this is a blurry example. You can imagine, and lots of websites do this, where it's when it's generating something, it has a partial complete. It makes you feel like you can see things happening. It turns out that is very complicated to do in Shiny. It's actually less complicated if you have it as a separate API. It's even more complicated if you all do that internally within the Shiny API. And I challenge you, listener, who thinks you're very good at Shiny, and maybe you are, I trust you. This is, I think, an interesting Shiny puzzle of just take a ggplot, give it a bunch of different attributes, have it have some points, have it have some lines, have it have a bunch of stuff, and then see if you can get a Shiny app to only show first the points, and then when the lines are ready, show the lines, and then show the have it do a generative show the Shiny the ggplot image in steps. Enormously hard to do, and for some reason that was the straw that broke my back of, okay, this is not fun anymore. Well, it was that, and one other thing, which is actually maybe even more frustrating, which is it turns out that full e-commerce pages are very complex. If you actually go to a website that buys and sells things, so, okay, for this, I would need a page to actually make the chart, which is what I showed. I need some sort of page for what your cart is if you order a couple of charts. I need a home page. I need some sort of page for if you complete your order to go look at the order status. I need a customer contact page. You need a lot of things. And then very quickly it becomes wait, why am I doing this in Shiny? This does not feel like the ideal thing for Shiny. And I had that thought and I said, hey, can't you pay money for these sorts of things for Stripe or Spotify? no, Spotify, no, Shopify. Can you pay money for sites like Shopify for this? And it turns out you can, but it turns out they're actually almost as complicated. Like to get it the way you want, it turns out there's lots of code too. The point is, I was very unhappy with everything. I just threw up my hands in frustration. And this is project 2 I've never delivered, which brings me to project 3 I've never delivered, which is a funny sex advice AI. And you're going to think, okay, boy, strap in. So here's the thing about me. And again, if you've seen any of my other talks before, you may have noticed this. I have a bit of a reputation, which is I've in the past generated some weird projects. Like once I trained in R with Keras, a neural network, to generate license plates that would get banned by the state of Arizona. And then one time, me and my wife Heather Nolis did analysis for the Stranger the newspaper. They ran a sex survey, and we did like an analysis of what the interesting results are. Both very fascinating projects. I highly recommend you check those out. But the point is, I have a reputation for doing weird stuff in this vein, I guess. And at one point, I had the idea of, hey, what if I trained, and this is back in the day, this is an old project, trained GPT-2 on sex advice columnist data, which is to say, there are some sex advice columnists out there in the world. I could scrape their websites and get a bunch of training data. And I would, at this point, this is GPT, it was a while ago. So I'm going to train GPT on this training data and see what happens. And I'm going to wrap a Shiny UI around this. There's a lot of data and it's very silly. And the idea being, you type in a question, it would answer for you. And so the thing about showing you this project is I cannot in good conscience show you this project in a conference talk without warning everyone. It feels bad. But here's the real problem. Assume there's kind of what you'd expect there. The problem is, it was not actually fun. You know, when you typed in a question, what you got was basically, it's like a very generic, plain sex advice columnist answering this. And at the time, I thought this was fascinating of, wow, just because you're throwing AI at it doesn't mean it's interesting. Now, you know, like 4 years later, I feel like we've all noticed this, where people are like, hey, look, we generated this text in GPT, you know, chat GPT. Isn't that fun? And you're like, this is not a good article, The Verge. This is actually quite boring. So like the idea that just because an AI generated it becomes more interesting, I think we learned isn't true. But at the time I thought it was true. And so this is a Shiny app I was working on where I just, because the actual joke ended up being not funny, unrelated to Shiny, I ended up stopping working on it. And this is actually, again, I think a strength of Shiny, because if I did in another language, it'd take me a lot longer to find out, hey, this is not actually a fun idea. Okay, and so then I have one last, because I have a little bit extra time. I have one honorable mention, which is a failed side project not in R. And I bring this up because, you know, as I was looking through my archives to get these 3, I found a 4th project, which is not in Shiny. It wasn't even in R, but it was so weird and interesting, and I wish it actually launched, that I'm going to mention it anyway. I'm sorry I'm breaking the spirit of this conference, but please just like hang in there for like 3 minutes. So here's where I'm at. When I was in grad school in Arizona, I loved lazy river tubing. That was my favorite. You get some tubes, you get your friends, you get some drinks, you get on the water, and you sit there for a bunch of hours not doing anything. And I really like this because you're like, there's no electronics, there's just relaxing. It's also good. But like with the bicycling, there's times of the year where you just can't go lazy river tubing. And I really wanted to recreate the feel of lazy river tubing without having to actually go and get in the water. And I thought about different ways to do that. And to me, the thing that came up as the best idea was, I don't know if you guys have ever seen roguelikes, where it's like a video game and you're like an ASCII character running around. But for some reason in grad school, I had this idea of like, man, I want to make a roguelike that is just the spirit of lazy river tubing. So I ended up doing this in Python 2.7. Again, this is old. I was back in grad school. And I can't believe I got code from 2015 Python to work again. But I actually do have it. It is running right here. So it's tubing simulator. You select where in the river you are, and then you're this little character. You're that little ASCII at the top, and you're going down the river. And you can put this on your TV screen. It'll move on its own. You can like set up a tube in your living room and just watch and have fun. Eventually, I was going to have things like real tubing simulator, like real tubing, where like animals will sometimes show up on the side of the river, but sometimes nothing. Or maybe like undergrads who had too much to drink tube down with you. I had a lot of big ambitions. And honestly, this is of all the projects I've worked on and haven't finished, this is the one I most regret not finishing because I think it's so good. And I've never talked about it at any conference until this one. And I just couldn't say no to doing it here. So anyways, so there you have it. I hope we learned something. I don't know if anyone actually learned anything, but it did give me an excuse to talk about these projects that have been weighing on me for so long, and I finally get to share with the world, and I really appreciate this. I do think there's probably some deeper lesson about, hey, it's cool that a Shiny and R are a programming language where you actually get to do cool stuff really quickly. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. But yeah, there we go. That's my conference talk. Thank you so much.
This was awesome. I cannot contain my excitement because I've been watching you so excitedly talking about all these ideas, and it's been so amazing. I'm loving the energy. I think everyone actually is loving the energy. The chat is again rolling here,
Excellent.
and it's just awesome. I think all of those ideas are completely quirky, and I think, wow, I could not even top the ideas themselves, to be honest. So yeah, this is amazing. We have a few questions from the crowd.
Okay.
So we have one question from Libby. I think you mentioned something like this is not a good idea for Shiny and this is a good idea for Shiny. So this gets into a bit of that where when do you draw the line? Is this is a good idea for Shiny, or is it or this is not a good idea for Shiny?
So that's a good question. So it's almost less about the language, more about like if I'm working in a business and it's like, hey, I'm a data scientist. I really know a lot about linear regressions and I don't know very much about web frameworks. And if it's getting to the point where I'm spending more of my time thinking about web frameworks than I am about linear regressions, then it's probably a sign that it's not for Shiny, which is to say, and like, I think this is a general problem with Shiny, not with like problem, but thing you have to think about with Shiny, which is where's the point where it's like, I shouldn't be the one maintaining this. And how are we going to make sure that when I, as a data scientist, don't want to maintain this anymore, I'm ready to pass it off? And so the advantage of using Shiny is you can do more as the data scientist, but the disadvantage is the longer you wait to pass it off, the more people are going to have to recode in a language that is, more universally usable.
Yeah. And we have a question from Damien who has asked, what's the weirdest application you've built in the past? Is it one of these three? Or...
I don't know how I could do much better than these ones. I think probably, yeah. I think any one of those is probably the weirdest. If you want to talk about what is the weirdest that I successfully launched, I do think probably the offensive license plate generator is probably my weirdest project to date. But I have a lot of weird ones. And I probably have more too if I did another scraping of my archives. But I don't know, this felt like plenty.
Also, we're kind of curious. What kind of work are you doing with Fanatics Incorporated? Would you want to talk about it a little?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So at Fanatics, Fanatics is the premier retailer of sports apparel stuff. So I help a lot right now with a lot of like optimizing the ads. Like how do we what's the right price you set for ads? How should we which product should we set ads for? Like all that kind of stuff is what I'm being involved with right now. But Fanatics has there's lots of interesting data science work at Fanatics just because of how many products we carry, as well as the fact that Fanatics has lots of there are lots of Fanatics powered sites. So lots of your favorite sports teams, their shops are that'll be the name of the team, but then if you look on the back end, we are helping run it. And so that creates a lot of interesting data problems with how do you think about one versus the other and that kind of stuff. So those are some of the kinds of things. But yeah, it's really a company that's growing pretty quick.
Awesome. I think that's really good that it's going in the correct direction. And we have one question since you mentioned Python. And are you considering doing the Grand School Tubing 2.0 using Shiny for Python since we have Shiny for Python out already?
Okay, so here's the thing: is that the hard part? Okay. So this is maybe a thing that other people have thought about more than me. But actually, when you think about coding a video game, coding a video game is wildly different than coding a website, because a video game, you really need an instantaneous responsiveness when you press a button and things like that. And so not just Shiny, but I think lots of programming language I've watched struggle a little bit when someone's like, hey, I like this programming language, I'm going to create a game in it. And it's like, oh, actually, just the way it is designed is not designed for that kind of stuff. So I haven't thought very much about coding games in R. I know other people have thought a bit, but I don't know very much about it. But as you can see, it's a pretty basic game. So I don't know if it conceptually be too difficult to do in R. I just haven't really thought about it before.
Fantastic. I think that's we have one more question. It's, what is it like being so famous in the community? Do you get an agent, or how does that work? It's a silly question, but what would be the answer?
Okay, that's a good question. One, I stopped using Twitter recently for the most part. I will occasionally tweet that I'm doing this talk and things like that. I don't really use it anymore. So I actually don't have as very many occasions anymore to talk to the community, which I'm struggling with because I miss you all and I got to figure that out. So I will say that's it's a little bit weird lately, but mostly it's just nice because I feel like if you go to a conference or something and you're like, I don't know anyone, I'm nervous. I get that feeling too, but it's just there's an increased probability that someone will just walk up to me first, which makes it a little easier. So mostly it's like 20% easier social interactions, but other than that, it's pretty much the same.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. I think that is all the questions we have. If anyone has any more questions for Jacqueline, please feel free to send a message on the Epsilon ShinyCon Slack.
I think I did see one in the chat that I will just briefly mention. Someone asked, is any of this stuff being open sourced? I'm pretty sure the tubing simulator one, if it is not on my GitHub, then I can just make it available on the GitHub. It's code from when I was like 8 years ago, and it wasn't really commented and half done, so it's not going to be good, but you can at least get a very basic thing. So just let me know if it's not there and I can put it up.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And come back again with more viewer apps. I think we can only expect more amazing ideas from you. So we'll look forward to it, and we'll see you next year. Thank you so much.